All right, and now we are joined by the one, the only Broken Blade top laner for Schalke 04. And right off the bat, BB, I wish we could get you here on better circumstances. When we requested you, I was fully all steam ahead on the Schalke hype train. I predicted it on broadcast too, and through a sad turn of events, sadly we cannot get you after a win. But I would love to reflect on maybe the more positive half of your weekend first. We were just talking about Fnatic before we invited you on. I'd love to get your take, your thoughts on the Fnatic series and kind of what went so well for you guys as a team.
I think there's two parts to it. I think Fnatic also had a really, really bad prep and really bad week coming into the playoffs. But also for us, I think we prepared really well coming into the game against Fnatic. We knew how they wanted to play, and we kind of punished their play style. And that's why it kind of was a quick 3-0, because, it's just multiplied. They had a really bad prep, I think, and I don't think they were really at their peak at performing right now. And for us, we were just starting to rise, and that's why it was so easy.
Was their plan surprising to you at all with this TF and then counterpick the GP with things like Lulu and Cho'Gath? And is this something that was in scrims or something you expected at all? Was it wait, why are they playing TF Lulu? Or do you think this should be a pretty free win though?
Actually, they played it against us in scrims once, the Lulu, and that didn't really go well for us. I think the game was over in 15 minutes, so maybe they got some confidence from that. But I've been really confident on GP since I'm in EU, actually, and those kind of matchups didn't really seem to work. Maybe against other people, I'm not sure. So we played pretty well around the TF because we kind of know that Niski's playstyle is kind of these kind of champs, So we're kind of expecting it. And after they failed to win with it 2 times, it's kind of they will not go for it again,
Yeah, and
I think what did they play in third?
So they played.
I'm not sure.
We'll just check the individual.
I think they banned GP right, and you played Aatrox into Urgot.
No,
I played
Urgot.
Urgot into Aatrox, other way around.
And then the last game, Corki. It was Corki Azir. I remember we were really sad about it on the cast. We're like, if this is going to be the last game, and we end with Corki,
but then the bot dive.
But then the bot dive, and Abadage gets to look like Faker Dage one more time. Even though, in hindsight, maybe Fnatic was just griefing a bit on the dive. In general, this series, we talked a lot about it, where it felt like Schalke, you guys just didn't have to show anything in drafts and picks and bans. It felt like you guys got to play one draft over and over and over again. Were you surprised that Fnatic just kept trying to force a lot of the same strategies? Because by the time we got to game 2 and the Lee Sin came out, I was lost. Does Lee Sin exist in scrims? Have you guys seen Lee Sin at all? This is a lot of what we saw was kind of coming out of left field, and I don't want to flame it because I don't know. I'm just curious if it's been showing up anywhere else.
I think it was because Selfmade was kind of too overconfident. I think he went to 4-5 with his picks, if I remember correctly, and then we kind of banned him out, so he didn't really have a good option. I mean, he could pick stuff like Lilia and stuff, but then they would have triple AP topside. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't really have a lot of options anymore, and he was probably thinking, okay, just give me Lee Sin, I'm going to outplay them. But it just didn't work, He had one really good play on Victor in mid lane, but that was it from Lee Sin in that game. And also, I think Bippo died of it too many times that game. And we didn't really have to show much,
Yeah. And I mean, it felt like we talked to, I think, Neon as well after the series, and it generally felt like the mood was pretty high heading kind of into this Sunday series. And I was pretty optimistic, but then when we shift focus to the sadder series for Schalke this weekend, it was the Rogue series. At the end of the day, 3-1. This first game, it felt really difficult. How did it feel for you? Because you were kind of the Aurelia, you were the person who was getting a lot of attention, while I think in turn, Neon was definitely kind of left on his own island just to survive against the Ashe. You were the one getting the dives. You were the one getting the support. What did it feel like to play Aurelia in that first game against Rogue?
To be fair, it felt really bad. I think the whole comp was just way too good for us to play against, especially for my champ. I had a really, really good 1v1 matchup, obviously, and I think I was ahead so much CS, but it doesn't help me actually win the game, which was kind of sad. But also, coming into the second game already, we decided we don't want to go for a similar draft anymore. And also on that game, I think the next game I played Nocturne, and I actually wanted to play Nocturne already on that game, but the Nocturne was really spontaneous. Like the day before we had the draft meeting, he was like, "Okay, can you play Nocturne?" He's playing champs that Nocturne is good into, and I was like, "All right, I'll practice it. I'll get it ready for tomorrow." And yeah, and the first game I kind of got scared to pick it, but in the second game I was like, "Okay, if you don't pick it, we might just lose." And it was actually a really good pick.
Yeah, and it actually surprised me because you even taught me things on Nocturne that I didn't know, where you ulted in and then Stride Breaker the way to cancel your ult. I didn't even know you could do that. That was crazy to see. But after the first game, it was like a 26-minute game. You lost like a Drake fight, I think it was. They just TP'd in and ended the game. Even I was surprised that the game was just over. How did you guys bounce back going into game 2? Because obviously you took game 2, you chose blue side. You said you ran a Nocturne comp. Was it like, did you guys feel down after that loss? Because it was pretty hard one, I think, after they just randomly ended after the Drake fight.
Actually, it's very surprising. Our team, like even in the G2 series where we were down 2-0, no one was really like very tilted or like, the mood is just always up. And especially coming into the game, the second game, our coach Dylan was like, "Guys, this is on me." Like he gives his players confidence to make it look like it's his fault. Obviously, we always can play better, right? But I think he did a good job always adapting in draft, and I think. Already after the first game, our drafts were a lot better to play. But then it just ended up on us playing worse.
I think
to lose games.
Yeah, and I'm always impressed about like being able to turn around that mental in those high pressure situations. I imagine it's really strenuous. Again, like game two was where I was like, we're getting 5 games because that comp looked so good for you guys. Like your entire top side was just cracked that game. And obviously like Neon was coming in clutch too. He was doing a really good job. But then like when you got to game 3, things got really difficult. And despite some like solid moments, it just felt like a lot of the really clean, really like everyone being on the same page kind of engages that we saw in game 2 weren't there anymore. And part of that is like you don't have a Hecarim Nocturne anymore, right? You just don't have 2 champions that are unstoppable and can leap into the backline. But I'm curious, what did game 3 feel like to you? I saw a lot of Limit kind of getting interrupted on these rel games. You had some sick moments on the Wukong where it really felt like this was the flank. This was the time where you guys were going to turn, but ultimately it felt like Rogue stopped it every time. What was your perspective on that game 3?
I think game 3 it was going really, really well. If bot lane didn't go so bad, I think the game would be very easy to win. I mean, obviously sometimes it can happen that you just do a mistake. And again, I think they play Kalista again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just very snowball heavy. And if they make one really good play, it's hard to come back. Also, I think there was one team fight at the Dragon where I flashed in and I knocked up Syndra and multiple people. And if the rel stun comes in a bit later,
mm-hmm.
like 0.23 seconds later, we will chance to see him and he will just die and we'll probably just win the game. But like these things can happen always. Like no one can always play perfect. No one can always play perfect off each other. But I think that was definitely a game that we should have won because I had the counter pick and I was really strong in the game, and my champ was also really good into all of their champs. Like Wukong was so good into Kalista. It's a bit worse against Syndra because she can one-shot you until you have MR. But yeah, overall I think it was my game to carry and I just couldn't.